saying, you know from your childhood, growing up in slavery, XYZ. I'm telling you now, ABC. And what did the Bani Israel do? They asked Prophet Musa alayhi salam, give us XYZ. This is why they were not ready to experience a different world. But then after a time, how many years did they spend in the desert? In the wilderness, wandering, lost. Because they refused to go into the promised land, because they refused to make the necessary sacrifices, they refused to do ABC, they were too attached to XYZ. What happened to them? They spent 40 years. Many people in those days probably did not live to be 40. They could die from illnesses or accidents, or they died as children. So 40 years going by in the desert, they became a new people. Because all the old generation died. The new generation came. And these generation never knew XYZ. They never saw the idols. They never saw the big pyramids and the big towers and the architecture of the religion of the Pharaoh and his people, the Egyptians. They knew the desert life. Desert life, this is the pure life. Because this is where Prophet Muhammad went as a child. Because even the Arabs of the day, in those days, they knew that if you want to have a child healthy, you send him to the desert. Don't let him grow or let her grow in the city. So this was the same thing happening to Bani Israel. They had a period of time in the desert, pure life. But Prophet Musa alayhi salam did not live long enough to see the end of those 40 years. He died partway through. He didn't want to die. When the angel of death came and asked him for permission, he punched the angel of death in the face. So hard that the angel of death lost his eye as human form. But then, when the angel of death complained to Allah and then came back to ask Musa again, Musa this time he said, go ahead, take me. Why did he refuse the first time? Because he had so much high aspirations for his people. He said, he thought that he would see his people in the promised land. And imagine how happy a leader is when he sees that his people have gained the greatest success. Fawzul Azim, the promise of Allah. Now imagine how sad he is when the angel of death comes to him and he hasn't seen his promise of Allah come yet. Imagine how sad. Now he knows that he's going to die and he's not going to witness with his own eyes the joy and happiness of victory. And so, but after that he realized that maybe death is right for me. Because Allah has sent the angel to call me, I'll go. And so he went. But after him, who was there? His servant, who is mentioned in Surah Al-Kahf, but his name is not mentioned in the Quran, Yusha bin Nun. In English we know him as Joshua, son of Nun. Yusha grew up serving, he was a servant of Musa alayhi salam, so he learned about, he drank from the fountain of prophecy, of prophethood. He was there to see the sunnah of Musa. And so he had the best teacher, and now he was the best student, and so when Prophet Musa died, he became the best successor to lead the people of Israel. And now he was the one who led the people into the land of Asham, the promised land, Al-Quds, Al-Ard al-Muqaddas. And he had at his back not an army of people who had still slave mentality, XYZ mentality. He had behind his back a generation of men and women who had been following ABC for their whole lives, so it became easy for them. And so when he told them ABC, they said ABC and they went along with him. And so they rushed into the land, the promised land, and they conquered all of that land from the mushrikeen. And then they established the masjid of their people. And that's where they had their kingdom. And then the rest is history. The highest point that they reached, Dawood and Sulaiman. So see how Prophet Musa didn't live to see them like that? Not because of any fault of his. He was a very patient leader. They gave him a lot of trouble. But it wasn't his destiny to see that happen. But it was the destiny of those after him. So that's one lesson we can get from this, is that all of us here we should not be impatient. We want to see the Mahdi come. We want to see Prophet Isa come back. We want to see the Muslim law of Sharia and the Muslim beauty of spirituality to be everywhere on earth, so that the people are not misguided following XYZ, thinking that they know what's best because that's what they say in their science books. We know a fraction of science. Allah knows everything there is to be about science. So when Allah says ABC and gives us ABC in the form of Quran, the form of Sharia, the form of our spirituality, then this is the one that we have to follow. And so we want to see all humanity benefit from this. But it may not happen in our lifetime. Even the youngest one here, that youngest person might be already bones and dust in the grave by the time we reach that. But as Muslims, we should be the kind of person who says, I'm going to be like Prophet Musa, I'm going to work for it even if I don't end up seeing it. Because think about Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, what fraction of the world's population was Muslim by the time he died? Very few. There were maybe 10,000 or a few tens of thousands of Muslims, but then the population, what about all the people in South Africa, South America, all the people on the continent of Africa, people in Asia, continental Asia, and in the islands of the Pacific, and Europe? These people did not know about Islam. But he left happy with his ummah, because he knew that his ummah would carry on. So now that's what we have to ask ourselves. What do we need to do to make sure that the next generation is going to be the Yusha bin Nun? We are the Musa, but we have to make sure the next generation is Yusha bin Nun to carry them through. And this is what we have to think about. Now we think about Brad Adams in Turbulence, in the novel. He had to go and look for it, to look for Islam. And if we go and we look around the planet Earth right now, we find humanity is searching. They might not know that they're searching, but they're searching. Because everybody wants an answer to hunger, world hunger. Everybody wants an answer to rising sea levels. Everybody wants an answer to all of the bad things that are happening in the cities, the crime, the bad things that happen to the youth around the world, in every country. Everybody wants to see these things happening. And they're searching. And so scientists come and they say, QRS, and this is the answer. And then other scientists say, no, it's DEF. And they give so many different ones, and we try it for a little bit and it fails. And we try it for a little bit. So they're searching. They're sincere in their search. Now, we are the Muslims who have ABC. If you find somebody in a dark room, and you're listening to that person and they're trying to find the light. They pick up a cup. No, it's not working to find it, to turn on the light. They pick up a shoe. It's not going to make the room light. And you have the flashlight and you can go and grab their hand and give it to them. Who's the wrong person if they're not finding the flashlight? They're trying hard. They're trying hard to find the flashlight. You're the one who has the flashlight or the candle. So you have to take their hand and give it to them. Or you have to light it and then they see it. Then they come to you. So this is what we need to do. Brad Adams is searching. And of course, Ibrahim said, Brad Adams is not just representing himself, one character. He's representing the whole society, not just of America, but the whole world. Everybody's al-Hakim al-Takathur, they're trying to gain their wealth, collecting everything. Every country in the world wants to increase its GDP. They're increasing their GDP, but they're decreasing their spirituality. And so this is not the way to success. They think GDP is ABC, but GDP is XYZ. So they're going down and they think they're going up. And this is happening to the Muslim nations too. Egypt, we see it happening. They're trying to get the same kind of government and the same kind of system as all the Western nations because they think that's ABC, but this is XYZ. I mean, maybe Allah will guide them and guide all of the Muslim nations and all of the nations to ABC. But right now we're still toying with XYZ, thinking that these things will work. Because that's what the modern science has said. But of course, as we know, modern science is always limited to the time that you have reached. But Allah knows all the science that ever will be. So we trust Him first and last. So what do we do about this then? All the Muslim world, they're trying to increase their output. They're trying to increase their exports. They're trying to increase their revenues. They're trying to handle their budgets the same way as the Western nations. But what's happening to them? They're getting deeper and deeper in debt. Not just Muslim countries, but if you just look in South America, these countries they call them, not just in South America, but also in Africa, they call these like slave nations. Why are they slave nations? Not because the nations are their slaves, like being whipped in the back, but because their people are paying their taxes to a government so that the government can pay the interest to the Western nations. So all of these countries are down. They think that they're getting higher by following the Western and the modern aspect, the modern model, but actually it's making them lower. So they're searching. They're sincere in their search. So what do we do about it? We are the ones with the flashlight. We hear them stumbling around in the darkness. We should turn on the flashlight, we should light the candle, and then they will see us and they will come. But we first have to be the ones to take that little effort to light the candle. And we have to have faith that the candle will actually be light when it comes. And how do we know if it's going to happen, if it's going to actually work? We know it because Allah said so. We know it because Prophet ﷺ did it. He lit some small light in Medina, and people came and they followed him. And so, what do we do for people like Brad? What do we do for people, our neighbors? For Lexington. We can think about Lexington, just thinking about this one city. We want this city to be a Muslim city. We want there to be a Muslim on every street. We want to be adhan to be loud. We don't know if it will be in 20 years. We don't know if it will be in 50 years, 100, 200, but we want it to happen. So what do we do about it? One thing, the ayah of the Quran, Allah says that كُنْتُمْ خَيْرَ أُمَّةٍ أُخْرِجَتْ لِلنَّاسِ. We have to believe this wholeheartedly. Allah says, you are the best nation developed or raised out, brought out for humanity. So Allah, of course, observes humanity and He sees that we're in trouble. So He sends Rahmatul lil Alameen, Muhammad. Muhammad brings the message, and with this message, he develops an ummah. And that ummah is the best ummah. There's no ummah better than that ummah. The British thought that they were the best nation. They thought they were the best ummah. They used to have a saying. What's the name of the British flag in the old days? The Union Jack. They say that the sun never sets on the Union Jack because the United Kingdom had territories everywhere in every time zone. So truly, the sun never set on their flag. But then what happened to them? A little bald man with glasses and a cotton cloth stood up in India, and the British Empire collapsed. Now they're just only a couple of small islands. And then the United States came, and now they say the sun never sets on the Star-Spangled Banner, the Stars and Stripes. Why do they say that? Because they don't have territories necessarily in every time zone, but they have military bases in every time zone. And so now we think of the United States as being khayra ummah because of their success. We see how successful they are. We see how much affluence we have in this nation. But are they really khayra ummah? If we think that they're khayra ummah, then let's go ahead and do what they're doing, X, Y, Z, and we'll see what happens to us. But if we trust Allah, the Quran is not the word of some poet or anything. It's the word of the one who made everything. He made the farthest star that we've never seen and we will never see. And He made the heart that's beating in each of our chests. He made the angels that are sitting between us. And He's the one who's, He's like the most honored guest among us. He's listening to us. And so He's the one that we trust. And if He says, you are khayra ummah, do you say, no, I like what America is doing. They are khayra ummah. Or I like what the scientists say. If we do that, we'll be khayra ummah. No. We trust Allah. And even if something doesn't seem like it's possible at the moment, it seems like, maybe if we do things ABC, it's still not going to work. No, you stick to it. And this is what Musa did. And even though he didn't live to see it, Yusha ibn Nun carried it on. And they achieved ABC. So that's the first thing. We have to believe this wholeheartedly, that there's no nation on this planet better than us. We're not saying that out of arrogance, but we're saying that because Allah told us. And if we don't believe it, that's kufr. Because we're not believing our own Creator. We think He's lying to us? No. Allah did not lie. Allah has made zulm, oppression, haram on Himself. And lying is one of the forms of zulm, oppression and darkness. And so of course Allah does not lie to us. Allah is the one who speaks all the truth. Sadaqallah. Sadaqallah al-Azim. surely Allah has spoken the truth. And so if Allah tells us that we are khayra ummah, that's the first thing, we must believe it. So what comes next in the ayah? كُنْتُمْ خَيْرَ أُمَّةٍ أُخْرِجَتْ لِلنَّاسِ تَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. What is this تَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ? Two simple words, but so important. It means that we enjoin, we invite towards, we encourage the good deeds, things that are good. Are we Muslims truly doing this? We have to think. Sometimes we see something happening in the world that's bad, and we think, there's such an answer for this. And it makes good dinner conversation. We sit around and we talk about the problems of the world, and we say, yeah, if only they were doing this, if only we were doing this. But we can't go and put our hand on somebody else's country when we're here. So what we should do is we should do ta'muruna bil ma'ruf here at our home, where we are. And Allah is so merciful to us, He put us in a time of great difficulty. Why is that mercy? Because if Allah puts let's say this room is a mess, and then somebody says, I'll give you $10 for every little piece of trash you pick up, and then He puts you in this room, and you have all that trash to pick up, you should be happy. Because now you have a lot of trash to put away, and now you have all the money. This is the same thing. Allah put us in 21st century, well, not 21st century, we should say 15th century. Because if we say 21st century, we're going by the non-Muslim calendar. We should start going by our own calendar, which is Hijri calendar, the one that the Khalifa used, the Khulafa Rashidun used, which is 15th century, because the year is 1434. So here in the 15th century, what do we find? We find that there's a lot of this garbage on planet Earth. There's a lot of opportunities for us Muslims to go and clean it up. And for every one you clean, Allah gives you ajr. And it increases you. So when we look out and see the troubles of the world, some part of us should be sad, obviously, but the other part should be say, I'm ambitious to do as much as I can before I die. And I'm ambitious to teach my children to be people who can do it after me. So we should, if we go outside, we'll find a lot of this. We'll have a lot of opportunities to get that ajr, to gain pleasure in Allah's eyes. So we can just pick some examples. If we go in Lexington, if we go on the streets of Lexington, we will find, for example, trash. Picking up the trash itself is a good deed, but if you observe what the trash is, you can find even more opportunities to do good. You find lottery ticket. Is this haram or halal? No question, it's haram. Gambling. These are poor people. These corporations, lottery corporations, are exploiting the poor of this nation, the poor non-Muslims, by saying, you buy our tickets, you may get $1 million or more. By the time they died, they probably gave thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars to these corporations, and they didn't get one penny from it. This is taghut, this is oppression. So if we see this lottery ticket and we put it in our trash bag, this is something that I need to change. So when we talk to people, we need to bring this up as part of the conversation, and we need to invite people towards boycotting lottery tickets. And if we can, we should try to boycott. We should first advise places that sell lottery tickets, tell them no, don't do that. And if they continue, then you can, inshallah, organize to boycott. That's one thing we can do. So you go down the street and you pick up another one. You find, oh hey, what's this? It is a packet of cigarettes. Cigarettes, maybe not as clear as haram as gambling, but we know that it damages the body and it gives you no good. It's harm in it and there's no benefit. At least for alcohol, for example, Allah says there's some benefit, but there's more harm than benefit. Tobacco, there's smoking, zero benefit, but the harm is great. So we can assume that Allah does not like it. We can't say it's haram because that would be that we don't want to put ourselves in that position of making such kind of fatwa. But we can say that it's something very dislikable. So if we see this and we put it in our trash bag, now we can start saying the same thing about cigarettes. How many dollars are spent to people who have lung cancer or to have heart problems because of this kind of thing? And this is another thing. This is something actually that affects the Muslims. So that's one thing we can do when we see Muslims doing that. We can give them a kind word, or we can encourage them some way. So this is another thing that we can do. We can encourage people to boycott this kind of thing. And then we have, you keep going down the street, you pick up more trash, and you'll find like a beard. That's another one. And so you'll find so many of these examples. And actually, I think the order is switched. What I'm saying is actually the next point. كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس تأمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر. تنهون عن المنكر is all of these things I was talking about. Lottery ticket, smoking, alcohol, and then also other things too, like the bad things that happen in the music, in the movies, on the internet, these kinds of things. That's we want to prevent that kind of thing. That's nahu anil munkar. So since I switched it, please forgive me, I'll go ahead and say what are some things that we can do. Ta'muruna bil ma'ruf. Ta'muruna bil ma'ruf is inviting towards the good deeds. Now, we want to see what's a good deed. What is a good deed? Ibrahim mentioned some. He said going to the masjid is a good deed. So Ibrahim is inviting us to go to the masjid. He is now being part of Khaira Ummah because he's inviting us towards doing a good deed, which is going to the masjid. That brings your hearts together. Another thing that comes, an opportunity that comes when you're in the masjid, what do? You don't just make salah and then you run out afterwards. You should spend time talking to people, talking about what they know, what you know. And then sometime in the conversation what comes up, oh, we know that such and such family is having trouble, financial trouble or some kind of trouble. Maybe there's refugees, or maybe there's an orphan, that you can go help them. So going to the masjid, talking with other Muslims, we learn of good deeds that we can go and do. We can donate to these people, and we can give to good causes. But we have to actually go and do it ourselves, do that. And we can't just say, oh, I wish such and such would happen, and if only it could happen. No, we can do it. Because here in Lexington, how many homeless people do you find? If you go to the library, Central Library, you'll find homeless people inside the library and outside the library. Or if you go to, there's a Catholic Action Center, CAC, they have a soup kitchen. Or the Share Lexington, of course. Our own Share Lexington. They have soup kitchen during parts of the year, and they have clothes and they have programs to educate. So these are the things that we can do, and they're right here in our own town of Lexington. So let's not worry too much. Obviously, we worry about Syria, we worry about Palestine, and we do what we can for them from over here. But we should not forget about doing something here around us so that we can be khayra ummah. So kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat an-nas ta'muruna bil ma'ruf wa tanhauna 'anil munkar. We already talked about that. Wa tu'minuna billah. Now, why does this tu'minuna billah is because we believe in Allah. Why does Allah, he mentions these three things, but he mentions tu'minuna billah last? Isn't this the most important one? When we say the shahada, isn't that the first of the 5 pillars? So why is Allah mentioning it after doing good deeds or enjoining towards good and forbidding the bad? It's because, there could be much wisdom behind this. But one thing that we can say is that if you go to your neighbor, knock on the door, and you say, believe in Allah, be a Muslim, what are they going to do? No thank you, and they close the door. This is what some religions, they try to do like that. They hand out pamphlets and they knock on people's doors and they invite them, come to our temple, come to our sanctuary on Sunday or something, and then you'll get an experience in your lifetime that will change your life. But this way doesn't work. Because if we look at Prophet ﷺ, he had methods for different people. But for example, there would be an old lady who would be trying to carry her luggage onto her animal. But she's an old lady, she can't do it. And she's an idol worshiper, so she's not Muslim. Does Prophet ﷺ, Allah's Messenger, go to her and say, become a Muslim? And then what does she do? She wouldn't respond. So what does he do? He goes to her and helps her with the pack, puts it on the back of the animal, and without speaking they go to her house so that she can put the things in. And meanwhile she's saying all kinds of things. You're a nice man, I want to give you some advice. There's this sorcerer going around named Muhammad. If you listen to him, he's going to corrupt you. He's going to make you go the bad path. He's corrupting the young people, he's corrupting the slaves. So I want to give you this advice. You give me some good help, some service, I want to give you advice. Don't follow this man Muhammad. So then they got to the destination. Prophet ﷺ, he's listening to her complaints, to her Islamophobia. But when they get to the door and he helps her, she says, by the way, what's your name? He says, Ana Muhammad. My name is Muhammad. And she's so astounded. What happened to her then? Then she says, I believe in Allah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. So he did a good deed. And through that good deed, the lady saw how pure he was and how good he was and how all of the false media and the false representation that she was receiving is completely fictitious. So if we go and we tell people, knock, 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 they open the door, Islam is not terrorist, boom, they close the door. But if you actually go and they see people in kufi or turban or hijab going outside and they see you picking up trash, or they see you, you mow their lawn without asking them, you just, if you see they need to mow the lawn, then you go, or in the winter time, you shovel their walk without asking them, and without, and then without asking for pay, they see Muslims. Now imagine if every Muslim in Lexington was doing this, there would be no doubt that there is a powerful force living in this city, and that city is, that powerful force is called the Muslim Ummah. There would be no doubt. And that's why actually it's very good for the sisters wearing hijab. They are representing Islam when they go outside anytime. Because this itself is ta'muruna bil ma'ruf. Because you're encouraging other women in the society. They need this encouragement. They're encouraging to cover up. Right? And so this itself, just wearing this is you are becoming khayr ummah just by wearing that. So our brothers too, we should try to learn from the sisters and try to be unashamedly Muslim and openly Muslim, so that when they see you doing good deeds, they won't just see you as being, oh, you're a person from Asia doing a good deed. They will say, oh, you're a Muslim doing a good deed, and then that will say. So now in the future they won't say, oh, Thai people and Indonesian people are so nice. They'll say, oh, Muslim people are so nice. And people realize this. They'll go home and they'll hear all of the news broadcasters saying bad things about Muslims, but then when they go outside, they see a different picture and they start scratching their heads. And then when they come to you and they say, what are you doing? Like, I'm picking up trash. Why? Because this is my God's planet, and I don't want my God's planet to be dirty. And I want you, my neighbor, to have a clean street to walk on. I don't want your kid to trip and fall on that glass. When you think like, when they see you like that, that's going to put something in their hearts. So that's why وَتُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ is the third aspect of this equation. First we prevent people from doing the bad, or we encourage people to do the good. Then we prevent people from doing bad, so you don't go to them, criticize them first. No, you do good deeds, and when they come close to you, then you tell them, maybe you should stop doing such and such. And then after they see you and they respect you so much because of your akhlaq, your character, then you can say, I'm doing this because I worship Allah. My Lord and your Lord, I'm inviting you to do the same thing. And maybe you don't say it in those words. Maybe you say, we're having an iftar. How about you come to the iftar with free food? And people will love you there. You won't feel out of place. Which is true. Muslims are very welcoming when it comes to food, and especially in the masjid. In Masjid Bilal, for example, if non-Muslims came, we would feed them. And then they would see how beautiful Islam is. And they would see how we treat each other. They would see how we treat the youth. And we would see how the youth treat the elders. Because we're applying Islam today. We're not applying it theoretically. We're not saying this is what could happen. We're saying this is what is happening. And when the non-Muslims see that, they're like Brad. Brad sees that and they say, wow, this is consistency. There's consequences, good consequences for the good actions. And now I understand bad consequences for the bad actions. They say, this is brotherhood. There's brotherhood in this. And then they say that this is, what's up? There's peace. They get peace from this. And the last one, that's the last. There's 5 of them, right? Okay. But this is the psychology. This is the psychology that the non-Muslim has. And so when the non-Muslim sees that all of these 5 qualities are filled through the Muslim lifestyle, that will get them. That will be dawah for them. And that will get them thinking. And I think you will see more and more non-Muslims becoming Muslim, entering this religion. This is why Allah says, إِذَا جَاءَ نَصْرُ اللَّهِ وَالْفَتْحُ وَرَأَيْتَ النَّاسَ يَدْخُلُونَ فِي دِينِ اللَّهِ أَفْوَاجًا. That day may come. Maybe not in our lifetimes, but hopefully in our lifetimes, when we see so many people come to the masjid and very few of them are foreigners. We have Muslim, we're going to have, inshallah, one day we're going to have our imams are going to have accents. They're going to say, believe in Allah. Worship Allah, make salat. They're not going to say, believe in Allah and make salat. They're going to have the Kentucky accent. And we want that. We want Muslims from this land. We want an indigenous population. Because if you go to any Muslim country, if you go to Indonesia, is it a majority Arab? No. It's majority Indonesian. If you go to Iran, is it majority Arab? No, it's majority Persian. If you go to Kazakhstan, majority Kazakh. Well, the British Russians did something. So. If you go to Pakistan, majority Pakistani. So all the Muslim countries, if you go to